No, it can be about anything that we've spoken about, as long as we know the answers. If it's something we don't know the answer to,
Sam's going to answer.
Sam will. That's what Sam's here for. He'll answer everything. It may not be appropriate to record it. That's a good point. So I think I'm going to, there we go. All right, now we can hear all the dirt. I mean, now we'll take responsible questions from the, yeah, Steve. You mean how to convince them that they need to get help? Do you want to begin that one?
I can start this one. Like Michael told you earlier, you know, the information that we gave you this morning is just enough information to get you in really big trouble with somebody. So what you don't do is go to somebody and say, hey, you know, I think you may have bipolar disorder. I would not do that. I would not do that. You know, what you can do is say, you know, I have noticed some things that I'm concerned about. You know, I notice that you're down a lot, and I think that's really affected you spiritually. You know, have you ever thought about maybe seeing somebody about that? So, you know, deal with the specific things that you're seeing and talk with them about that instead of throwing out a label or something. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Now, let me quickly give you some advice about seeking help outside. There aren't enough mental health professionals that are Christians to go around. So we have to direct people outside the kingdom and find good mental health professionals. And we do a class where we talk about what the differences are between psychiatrists, psychologists, all those master's level people, LCSW, MSW. There's a million of it. It's an alphabet soup. So you have to educate yourself. And to tell you the truth, in your congregations, there's somebody with a mental health problem who is getting good treatment, and they can kind of spread the word, who's good and who's bad. If you have no other place to start, we usually tell people to go to your family doc, your primary care physician. Primary care docs, the way the insurance system is set up, is they're the gatekeepers. So they take their patients and refer them to specialists. So usually a primary care physician, a pediatrician, or a family practice physician will know who's good and who's bad. And they'll say, well, why don't you try this person or that person for this particular problem? Now, the responsibility to the Christian is this. Number one, they need to vet that mental health professional. Too many times, Christians with mental health problems will just do what they're told. Go see this guy. Let him help you. They have to be more active consumers. So you call this doctor, and you begin by saying, do you specialize in this kind of problem or this kind of age group? How much experience do you have with this kind of problem? That's number one. Anyone that doesn't willingly answer that question, you shake the dust off your feet. I like it when people call my office and they say, tell me a little about yourself. How many years experience do you have? Do you know how to work with this problem? I like it. I answer that gladly because I'd rather have them trust me than I know what I'm doing. So number one, you encourage the person to vet that mental health professional. Number two, when they start in treatment, the first thing they have to do is sit down and say, before we go any further, I want you to know I'm a Bible-believing Christian. Any advice you give me that's contrary to the Bible, I'm not going to do. Because in the world, you're going to get all kind of screwy, you know, if you have a kid with gender identity problems, for example, the therapist might say, well, why don't you let your child indulge his homosexual, you know, and see if that makes him happy. You're going to get all kind of advice like that. So you have to make it clear from the outset, this is my worldview, and this is what we won't do. Then, so you vetted him, you've made clear what you will and won't do based on your biblical convictions, and then you have to feel comfortable with that mental health professional. I say it's like a marriage. You know, if you don't feel some connection, some chemistry with that person, it's not going to go anywhere anyway. So it's got to be someone you feel good about. So that's how we encourage disciples to get help outside the kingdom. You want to add into that? So I know that was more of an answer than you asked for, but yeah. Well, you don't, once again, you have to know where your boundaries are. You're not a therapist. They have to get help through medication and or therapy for dealing with that compulsion. What you can do is, let's study this out. Why do you think God considers this a sin? How does it affect you and your family when you do this? Without putting pressure on them, you've got to stop right now, or you'll be found guilty before God and struck dead. That's the worst thing you can do. So you help them get help for their problem, but at the same time, you stay in the Bible and you say, look, at any given moment, this is your choice. You can do what's the righteous thing or the not righteous thing. I know you have this compulsion and you feel like you have to do it, and we're trying to get you help with that. I just want you to understand what the implications are of this.
Yeah. And the other, sin, God makes it sin because it's harmful to us, and it's harmful to us no matter what no matter what emotional problem we may be dealing with that causes that. It's still harmful to us. It's still detrimental to us. So I think talking with them about that, that sin hurts you. It hurts you. It hurts you spiritually. It hurts you emotionally. It's not anything that benefits you. And so it doesn't matter kind of what is tempting you to do that. It's still hurtful to you. So,
but in a sensitive, non-pressure way. So if you got all that, you're good. Anything else? Any other? How about we'll go with Don first. Right. Well, we're not Jesus, number one. Number two, we don't know absolutely everything that he did, but we do know he was all about the rest and restoration and would go off to quiet places. It usually says to pray, but I don't know, maybe he went jogging, I don't know. But the line, I think you touched on the line. We've established in that last class that you got to do this for your own health. Now, if it becomes more important than all these other things, because there are some activities, right, that are a little more conducive to obsessiveness, like runners. I know a lot of people who are runners. Runners tend to get, then it becomes an addiction, I got to do more every time. I've got to progress. I got to do more. And if I can't do it, I feel, so then it becomes problematic. So I think the whole thing is keeping it in context. I think we established in the last class, you got to do, for your own sake, for your rest and restoration and peace of mind and physical health, you got to do these things. But when it starts, when it becomes debauchery, when you do that instead of other things you need to do or should be doing, so it's striking a balance, I think. But don't be a guilty soul and like every minute I'm mountain biking or exercising, because that's why God mandated rest. And no, motorcycling is not in the Bible as far as I know, or anything like that, but I have to believe that's why God mandated rest, as we read. Yeah. You can't just leave it. Yes, cutting, it's what all the cool kids are doing. It's what all the cool kids are doing. And yes, cutting is sometimes superficial, sometimes it's manipulative, sometimes it's just to make a statement or control parents, but that doesn't make it any less harmful. Any threat of self-harm, even if it's superficial, has to be taken seriously. So you can help that parent and say, look, this is not a normal behavior. Now, you can't force them. You can't make them get help, but you can gently say, I'm concerned about this. It's not a normal behavior. It's a potential for self-harm. This is what I would suggest you do. But if you can't lead, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink, then, heaven forbid that something catastrophic will happen that motivates that parent to get help. But cutting is not a normal behavior. It's a popular behavior, but it's not normal, and any threat of self-harm has to be taken seriously. I'm sure you want to add to that? No? No? Okay. I must have done a good job. 2 minutes. Does that answer the, is that? Okay. Yeah, it has to be taken seriously. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Oh, good. Right. Right. Yeah. That's right. Right. This is a slow education process for our entire movement. It was back in 2000 that, as I mentioned, that there was very contentious about it. Is there really mental illness at all, or is there, should disciples take medication, stuff like that? This has been this slow education process since then. So nothing's you don't have to worry about going back to Lagos and, now we're focusing on mental health issues. It's just a slow education process. You're a little better equipped now than you were 48 hours ago to begin to help people. Did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, we were in South Africa earlier this year, and there were people from a number of different nations there, and we were in Trinidad this year. And in some of those cultures, it was such a taboo to even talk about there being such a thing as mental health issues. So I think that's where we start. You just start talking about it. I mean, we were telling the brothers and sisters in the ministry school in South Africa how proud we were that they were even encouraging people to teach them about these things, because it's so anti-cultural in some of their countries. So I think, just for disciples to start talking about these actually impact people. I mean, I think that's kind of where you start, so.
Oh, yeah, and then have us come visit. And yeah, that too. Can we do one more, Glenn? Or one more? Anybody? Okay, maybe it's academic. All right, thank you again, and enjoy Sam, because we sure do when he's